Hey guys, still there. I'm doing another deck discussion, and this time I'm discussing Archie's Scandinavia deck. He has this deck set up around infantry, by the looks of it. A lot of tanks I can see, not so many vehicles. One helicopter and a couple of aircraft. So let's see what Archie wants with this deck and what his thinking of it is. Alright Archie, what kind of deck do you have in mind? What kind of maps are you gearing this thing for?
I didn't really have one in mind. It's more general use, so I'm not quite gearing it towards 10v10s nor the kind of the standard 3v3. As a general all-rounder that I can kind of call upon if I'm new to a map or something like that. So a situation I'm not quite well versed in.
Right, okay. Logistics looks good. You got your command infantry. If you want to be a bit more versatile with your command infantry, you could load them in one of those Bell 412s.
Okay.
Sometimes you have an opportunity to completely fly around an enemy flank and then just land in their fob or next to their spawn zone. It's going to be a bit easier to do that with a 412 than just with a usual infantry unit. Although if you have other helicopters, like let's say you offload one of the FKP from the Lynx, you can just take the Lynx instead.
Okay.
Or actually, if you switch from the Commando Plus to the Stabsdeling, you're going to get the Lynx, which is a lot faster for a helicopter.
You're right, it is. Wow.
And I think they look better too, but that's a different point.
Personal preference.
Yep. Then Command Tank, always nice to have one of those. Couple of helicopters, FOB, and those Scanias. You don't really get a lot of chance or different opportunities for the resupplies, do you?
No, it's very limited.
Supply vehicles, not so much. There's one thing that I always consider when I'm picking a Scandinavia deck, is that the Amphibil 101 is amphibious. It's very situational, but it can help you get out of trouble if you have, let's say, an over-the-river point that you want to resupply, where a helicopter might not be able to go.
Well, if you're going too close to the lines and too close to that AA net.
Yeah, exactly. And then the Scania can't swim, so you're going to have to pick a bridge for him, or swim across with the Amphibil. But if you're not going for river maps, or if you just want to stay dry, then the Scania is perfectly for the job.
So which would you recommend, do you think? I mean, because you lose the 400 points of supply, don't you?
Yeah, you do, but I think you get multiple vehicles. You get 9,900 supplies if you take the Scania. The other one is 9,600, so you lose about 300 points of supplies.
Okay. That's not that bad, actually.
But it's a bit more micromanagement, of course, because you're either pretty much managing one Scania or, let's say, two Amphibils to get more or less the same supplies on target. But if you're happy with the Scania, just stick with that one.
Okay.
Next up.
I think... Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, don't worry. It's fine. Thank you.
How about infantry? What do you have in here and why?
Well, the FSK I've heard a lot about as kind of the Eric's it's kind of like the Legion 90, gives them a lot of kind of ability to hit those targets and reach out and touch them that you can't get with regular infantry.
Yeah, you do.
And you'll get a lot of tanks that probably just kind of sit outside your range, thinking they can't be touched, and you can move up with an Eric's unit and hit them.
Yeah, and they do a lot of damage.
Exactly. I mean, 25 AP power is pretty extreme.
Yeah.
And so that's why I've got the Fallschirmjäger and the FSK. And
yeah, the Fallschirmjäger pretty much have the same profile. They're a bigger squad, 15, and less training.
The reason I went for them is they're playing the role of my line infantry.
Okay. That's a good line infantry unit to have.
Instead of having kind of a cheaper unit, I'm kind of going for a slightly higher end.
Yeah, the one thing that you're leaving out there is that you don't really have an IFV that can support your troops from a longer range with an autocannon.
I know it's on the ATGM unit, but I do have the STRF 9040.
Oh yeah, you do. And you got the 302A, which has, let's say, a semi-inferior autocannon to that. Personally, I really like the Panzerskeete 90. They have a different anti-tank weapon compared to the Fallschirmjäger. Fallschirmjäger are significantly harder to kill. But what you do get is an infantry unit that's a lot cheaper, and you get that wonderful CV90-30 end with it. The way that you have it set up currently with the Volkskamjäger and the XA186 is a bit more motorized, and that's perfect, but the one thing that you don't have a lot of is autocannons.
I know what you mean, that can, let me down a bit.
They might put you in trouble.
You think I should lose one of the special forces units then?
Well, what's your thinking behind the FKP? Because they seem to be really similar to the FSK, except that they're not getting the Erics, but they get the Carl Gustaf M3.
Well, I just kind of they've got less AP power.
Yeah, they do. So where would you use the FKP in the links?
Well, I just kind of put it in there. I didn't really know which kind of special forces would be best. I've just kind of put it in there as kind of the quick insertion special forces. You go on the flanks with, or
especially if you can team those up with, let's say, Jäger, you're going to have a really potent force.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, do you think I should go for the Panzersketen instead?
Well, it depends. Some people really like those flanking maneuvers. I pretty much always try to do a flanking maneuver with some kind of infantry, so for me this works really well.
Yeah.
But I'd be hard-pressed between the FKP or the Panzerskete with their CV90-30. Have you used this deck yet?
No, I haven't yet.
Okay. Then for now, just stick with what you have. And if you see that you don't really use the FKP that much, or you're getting too many infantry rushes what you cannot defend against, then you might want to switch.
Okay.
Then there's the RBS 90, really nice anti-air unit. Great range on those.
I know, it's like on the helicopters especially.
Oh yeah. Airplanes are always a problem for manpads.
It's always fun when
more
you
like
get
a
one
lucky hit that you might be able to get, but I really wouldn't
count
count on
it. It's always
for
a bit of
that.
a cheer when your manpads takes down like 100.
Yeah, exactly.
Or something.
You get real celebratory from that. And then there's the RBS 56. That's always a point of discussion. The problem that I have with these guys is that while they're a 5-man team, which means that they might take one hit, the moment they fire, they're also going to get fired at instantly. They don't have the 2600 meter range.
And 50% accuracy, that really kind of lets them down a bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, but at the same time, they have a way higher armor penetration than most. And that means that if you do get the hit, you're very likely to kill whatever you're shooting at. Unless it's a BU or a T90.
Yeah.
But again, for now, keep them in. What you can do, though, is upfet them a little bit to just slightly boost that accuracy from 50% to, let's say... What do you get from that? 50... Let's say 10... I think you can go up to about 58% accuracy. And then the moment they start killing stuff, they're going to get upfetted even more. You cannot take the Volkskamjäger in anything like an IFV, do you? No, not really.
I don't think so, no. That's the annoying thing. You can bring them in helicopters. They're kind of similar to the Gurkhas.
Yeah. But all the helicopters from this faction, except for the Lynx, they seem really bad. They're slow, their autonomy's pretty bad.
They're just old versions of the Huey, aren't they?
Yep. They just named them differently, it seems. Okay, looks good.
Okay.
How about support?
Well, I was quite torn on, because especially when it comes to the IR capabilities, I mean, I would struggle to find, I don't know if I missed anything, but I struggled to find anything that was really quite effective as IR. AA?
Yeah, they just don't get that much.
No, that's the annoying thing. I mean, it's...
really long range red infrared, I think that's the longest infrared weapon in the game, is the EOTS. But you already got the NASAMs, which fulfill a pretty similar role. But you mean anti-air capability, anti-helicopter infrared?
Yeah, it's nice to kind of not have to micromanage every single... I mean, I put the LKV in LVKV in there.
Yeah.
But, I mean... not the LKV, which one of them? Sorry, that's the wrong one.
The NM45s.
The NM45.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's a truck with a machine gun on the back. I mean, it's hardly kind of, 20% accuracy. It leaves quite a lot to be desired.
Yeah, it does. The rate of fire makes up for it a little bit with 400 rounds. But what I've found that is if you put these things around the flanks, a helicopter's just going to smile at you, shoot you in the face, and move on.
Exactly. That's kind of my problem with it, is that, you know, it's quite nice to have some AA you might put on the flanks or on, you know, on a position you're not really quite concentrating on, where you can guarantee they're not really going to make a cohesive push, and even if they do, it's kind of, you know, you've got enough recon up, you don't have to kind of watch.
Yeah, you don't have to micromanage those all the time.
Yeah,
they're just there.
It's the micromanage. You know, you can't, when you want to play a bit of micro instead of macro.
Yeah. One unit that could do what you want it to do is either the LV RBV 701 or the NM 195. They carry the same missile, but the difference is that the 195 is a lot faster off-road, and they have the same price. It's really a bit of a trade-off, because the 195 carries 6 missiles, where the 701 carries 12. Although, if you are going to be dealing with a helicopter rush, and this thing is on your flank, then it might not live long enough to fire all 12 missiles anyway.
I mean, with 45% accuracy and only 4 AG power, I mean, that lets it down a bit. I think, if I'm correct in saying, I think the Chaparral's got 5, doesn't it?
Yeah, Chaparral has a bit more HE, definitely.
Which just lets it kind of hit those targets, the high end's a bit harder.
Yeah.
I suppose that's just
how about the RBS 90, the one on the rover?
I don't know. Looking at it, it doesn't look that bad, but I've kind of anything that's kind of on a Jeep like that, I just always kind of stay away from.
Well, if they're on their flanks, they're not that likely to take fire in the first place. They're just there as a sort of picket line instead, or in case something really does happen.
Yeah, I suppose. But it's got more accuracy actually than the NM 195.
Yeah, and the 701, they carry the same weapon. This is pretty much the upgraded version of it. And the big advantage is that it's a twin launcher. So it's going to fire faster.
2 missiles at once.
Yeah. Better accuracy, better rate of fire, same amount of missiles. I would switch this instead of the NM45. The one thing that the NM45 has going for it, though, is that it can also provide fire support if you are dealing with, let's say, a lot of infantry coming at you. It's just an autocannon on a truck.
Exactly.
But if you're really going for AA capability, let's say hands-off AA capability, then I think the RBS 90 is going to do what you want it to do.
Okay. Yeah, no, you're right, it does.
And then it's up to you if you're going to take 9 or 7. Accuracy 55% is already pretty good. You may not even need to really up-vet those.
Well, we're double, as you said, kind of with that multi-barrel launcher, they'll fire 2 missiles at once, so statistically, at least one of those has to hit. Obviously, it's never going to work out quite that way.
But a 4, you won't find too many 4 hit point helicopters. So you're going to have to hit more anyway.
Oh, what you mean, like the Hind is like 10?
The Hind, I don't think it's 10. I think it's 8, but it's also armored, so you're going to be facing with a little bit of armor before you actually do the HE damage to it.
Oh, so that negates some of the damage?
Yep.
Okay.
So with that in mind, I think that the 7 might be better in this situation. Just that little bit of extra accuracy, plus 16 versus plus 8.
It also gives it a bit more kind of, visual range as well.
Yeah, it does. Air detection is already pretty good on that vehicle. Anyway, moving on. You got the Amos. Very nice mortars. I always find though that they run out of ammo.
Yes, I did notice that. And I was kind of torn between them and the NM 106.
Yeah.
Because the NM 106 has got considerably more ammo, but it's got quite the smaller gun. I mean, with the 120 mil, you're going to be kind of putting a lot more punch out.
It does. It really depends on how you use your mortars. I usually use my mortars to suppress, which is something that the Amos does a bit better. But if you rain death with 4 mortars instead of, let's say, 2 Amos, I think that you can put up a smokescreen a lot faster. So it depends on really if you're going for smokescreens and pushing up through your own smoke, or if you want to do actual damage to a target.
I mean, I tend to do a bit of both, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I use them as a bit of fire support mixed with the kind of, putting up some kind of, smoke screens.
Yeah. Well, in that case, let's stick to the AMOS for now, and if you feel that that unit serves your needs, just stick with it.
It's actually quite nice as well because it's got a little bit of armor
Yeah.
in comparison to the MN 106.
Yeah. Well, quite
it
a
can
bit, really.
survive a bit of smudging.
4 points of armor is quite a lot.
Mm.
But then again, I believe it's the, what is this, the 9030 hull with a different weapon system on it?
I think it is. It's like what they've done with the Challenger Marksman, put a different weapon system on the same hull.
Yep, exactly.
And I find it a bit of a problem personally that I kind of set my mortars going and set the kind of stack the orders for them to move, but by the time they're starting to move, they're already being targeted by artillery.
Yeah,
with
exactly.
a bit of armor on it, it's just a bit kind of
This makes it more survivable.
Yeah.
Besides, you're going to be paying for that armor anyway because they're 65 points.
Yeah, so you're paying 130 points for 2.
Yeah. But then again, if you were to bring in a battery of 4, you'd be paying 40 points each, so you'd be paying even more. For pretty much the same firepower. 5 automatics. You can't go wrong with automatics.
I know, they are utter destruction, aren't they?
Oh yeah.
The
one thing is that they are pretty fragile. But so long as you keep that in mind, you're going to be absolutely perfect with these things.
Well, with my Spag AA guns anyway, I tend to keep them, just behind my front line. I never really tend to put them on the line, unless I'm kind of going Ka-52 hunting.
Yeah, and especially with this thing, you don't need to keep it on the front line because it has far better range than most Spags.
What's quite nice as well is that actually it was quite funny. I got caught out because I sent out like two 4-stacks of cheap tanks at our position, and some guys automatic just absolutely ripped through my tanks.
Yep, they can do awful. That. 60 rounds a minute rate of fire. But the moment this thing hits, even helicopters, they're going to feel it.
12 AP power on an AA gun. That's just appalling.
Yeah, and the beauty of it is a normal tank has a rate of fire of, let's say, 9. Maybe 15 if you have an autoloader. And with that firepower, let's say that you're facing 10 points of armor. This thing would only do 2 points of armor per hit, but it's going to hit you about 60 times a minute. So it's going to really quickly chew through your armor, whichever way you cut it.
In theory, could an automatic take down a super heavy?
Sure.
Just they would have to hit it enough.
Especially if the super heavy closes to short range. Because the closer you get to a target, the better armor penetration you get because it's kinetic.
Yeah.
And
absolutely. What does that mean, kinetic?
It means that pretend that you're firing a gun across a room or across the entire street. The kinetic energy at the end of the street is going to be far less, where you might not be able to make a hole in, let's say, a beer bottle. Whereas if you're shooting at it across the room, you're definitely going to destroy that beer bottle.
Yeah.
Now pretend that the bottle at the end of the street is the T-72 BU. You're never going to pen that.
Yeah.
But if it gets closer, and if it gets close enough, if it's in the same room, so to speak, as the automatic, then the automatic is absolutely going to win. If it can get the first couple of shots off. That's the one thing that could be a problem, because the BU is also going to get an accuracy improvement the closer it gets. And it only has to shoot you once, whereas you have to shoot the BU quite a few times, even at close range. But a great combination could be to first stun a super heavy with your AMOS, and then if you are really in the shit and you want to have your automatic kill it, you first need to stun it so it's not going to fire back at you, close the distance and kill it.
And you got to be pretty desperate though at that point, don't you? I mean, when it's warranted, I suppose it's,
It could work. I just wouldn't recommend it as a standard operating procedure. We have different ways to deal with that, as those kinds of things.
Yes. And they don't involve AA guns.
Yeah. Alright, finally, support NASAMS. Great missile.
It's the same missile on the Eagle, isn't it?
Yep, AMRAAMs.
F-15C.
And unlike most AA missiles, I believe that these are one of the few that are actually fire and forget.
So even if this gets destroyed by a seed, if the missile's out, and it could still hit it and destroy it.
Yep. Which does make it quite effective. As well as having 6 missiles instead of, let's say, if you were to pick the AUTS, or the... which one is it? The AUTS Hawk.
You only get 3,
Yeah, you only get 3.
which is one of the things I hate about the Hawk.
They do a lot of damage though.
There's so few missiles though. I mean, they like and look at the. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong one. I'm looking at the RBS Hawk. One sec. E2S Hawk. Here you go. It's only got 50% accuracy and 3 missiles. Let's say it misses the first one, hits the second one, then misses the third one. I mean.
Yeah. So you only got 1 missile for the price of 75.
Yeah.
And even then, most planes have 10 hit points, so you're not even going to kill it with your first missile.
Yeah, exactly. You'll just damage it severely. I mean, you might put it out of the action for a considerable period of time, but.
What I do love about the EOTS Hawk is that if you have a helicopter swarm and it's coming at you and this thing hits, you're going to nuke 4 or 5 helicopters at once. Just because it has such a large blast zone.
Mm.
Anyway, let's move on to tanks.
Yeah.
A lot of the Swedish design.
Well, I've always found they have the best tanks, don't they?
Yeah, they do. Or at least, yeah, absolutely. The STR V121's big favorite of mine. High rate of fire, good accuracy, good armor penetration. The one area it lacks in is armor.
The front's not too bad, but you kind of go to the back and the top. And the top's not very good at all.
No, it's easy to get clustered.
You compare that to that's transport top. I mean, you compare that to kind of an M1A1 or you're looking more like 4-5.
Yeah, exactly.
Makes it a lot more survivable to kind of
But tanks really don't get shot at from the top that often. It has to be an aircraft dropping a cluster bomb or a Smerch.
Yeah.
Anyway, STR V121, definitely something you should have in there. 103D, and then 2 cards of 103C. Why that many of the 103C?
See, this is where my knowledge is very limited with Scandinavian tanks. I picked those purely because they were the second rank in price.
Yeah.
Not in terms of kind of usability. I haven't used this deck yet, so.
Yeah.
I mean,
the one thing that you need to know about these vehicles is that they don't have a stabilizer. It's purely because of their design.
They're designed for defense, the defensive doctrine.
Yep. And that means that if you want to have these things on the offensive, then you're going to have to stop them, turn them in the right direction, and then pull the trigger. So having the STR V121 as an offensive tank would definitely work, especially if you back it up with one of those, let's say 1A5 NO2s.
Yeah.
Keep the STRV either the 103 or the 103C, the C or the D in this deck, because having both of them doesn't really give you that much better stats.
Add that much. Okay.
The one thing that the D has over the C is 1 point of armor penetration, 2 points of armor, and 5% accuracy. That's all.
I mean, but that makes the 2 points of armor makes quite a big difference, because I mean, you get to the kind of the low-end Chinese tanks have about 13 points of armor penetration.
Yep.
And when you kind of get up to 15, that makes them a bit more. They can hold their own a little bit more.
Absolutely.
I mean, they're not the best tanks ever, but at least they won't kind of evaporate on the first shot.
One of the tanks that I really like that could be an easy replacement for one of the 103Cs, and it's pretty cheap, is the STR V105.
Okay.
70% accuracy is something you really only see on the super heavies, but this thing still has it.
Or do you think I should keep it trained?
The STR V105?
Yeah.
I usually go with trained, because then I'm absolutely sure that whatever they're shooting at is going to be a one-shot kill. Depending, of course, on if it's a main battle tank or like a transport. What I use these things for is if I want to, let's say, do an initial push on a town. You're just setting up, you have your FKP going towards that position, your Volkskamjäger.
Yeah.
Just send one of these things along. And they're going to start killing off infantry transports before they hit the town. And I would place those in one of the slots where you have the 103Cs right now.
Sorry?
I would put those in one of the slots where you have the 103C right now, because you don't really need 18 of those and then 9 more of the 103D.
Yeah. They're a bit of a glass cannon though, aren't they?
Yeah, they're not that survivable. They are not really dealt or meant to go after main battle tanks.
But more that kind of fire support unit.
Yep. My ideal lineup in a situation like this would be the 103D as a defensive tank, the 121 as an offensive tank, preferably backed up by the 1A5 and 02 because they have a great gun and a good stabilizer.
Yeah.
And then let's say you have some more transports that you want dealt with, or you want to provide a bit of very accurate support for the 103D. You pick the 105 to do that job.
Yeah. So should I get rid of the 103Cs altogether, do you think?
Yeah, I wouldn't use them because they don't add that much capability that you don't have in 103D.
Okay.
And it gives you a few more points, which if you take those points and you put them in the vehicle tab, you have 3 more points, which means 2 more units that you can buy.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Let's first go over to Reconnaissance.
Okay, sure.
You said you like flanking moves. So
Yeah.
why do you have the Jaeger in a Jupiter?
Fair point. Well, I basically one of the things I always do is I always bring a infantry recon on the ground and an infantry recon in the air, and that's
Good
kind
strategy,
of the But do you think I should bring it the other way around, or?
Well, what's the advantage of having a recon on the ground?
That it can kind of get into the positions, for instance, across a river, or I know the MD Jupiter's not amphibious, but you can get into the positions, where quite in front of your front line, where the enemy still can't see it, and spot units, perhaps going into another flank, and just allow a bit kind of the artillery to be a bit more effective.
Yeah.
Kind of hitting those targets.
Okay, granted. But then wouldn't it be better to switch the Jaeger to a helicopter and have the Marine Jaeger, which already have exceptional stealth, as your frontliner?
Okay.
Because the Jaeger have their own very nice weaponry. They can go against infantry if they decide to kill off, let's say, a command infantry unit or a command vehicle, or you can go arty hunting. Especially if you combine these guys with the FKP that you already got on the links.
Yeah.
And then if you want to drop off some infantry at the front line, you can take Marine Jaeger, which are less detectable.
It's peculiar. The Marine Jaeger, the XA108, also 180.
Yeah.
And the kind of it is amphibious, but the upgrade of it isn't.
Yep.
It's really
I think that has to do with the amount of armor. It may be too heavy to float.
Oh, well, like the Bradley.
Yeah.
Always a peculiar one why the Bradley never floats, but it's probably to do with the armor. You're right.
Yeah, and it's a tracked vehicle. Not too many tracked vehicles have float capability. But if you want to do stuff where you want to, let's say, drop off infantry right across a river, then I think the XA180 is going to be best for that job.
Yeah. Okay. That's peculiar though. I've just noticed something. Have you noticed the model? The camo changes, but they've still got the propellers on the back.
Yeah, that's something that some vehicles have where they're not amphibious. I really don't know why that is.
I think it's probably just Eugen not changing the model.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of laziness on Eugen's end. And I wouldn't be surprised that in real life the XA186 actually does have amphibious capability. So we got Jaeger, let's say Jaeger 90 in the links, 5 of those. One Marine Jaeger, 5 of those in the XA180.
Yeah.
Then you got your 7 Recon Helos. Helos for this deck are always terrible.
Yeah.
And this, I believe, is the fastest you can get.
It always reminds me of a news chopper.
Yeah, it's
probably
weird.
What it is.
It probably is. I wouldn't use a color scheme like that in the military.
No.
Not really.
I'm just looking for the little Channel 7 news.
Yeah, exactly. Well, in all fairness, they are there to broadcast the news to us. In a different way. Alright, and then you have the Epb V90. Pretty much the CV90 with what seems to be a 90mm gun, and is actually just a machine gun.
Yeah, what is with that? I picked this unit. It's like, oh yeah, it looks like it's got a huge autocannon.
Yep, until it didn't.
It's got a, 30mm machine gun, or whatever it is.
If you would have an infantry fighting vehicle with exceptional optics, that would be a really dangerous and slightly overpowered vehicle.
Well, that's what the Bradley M3A3 has, doesn't it?
Yeah, but you're not paying 55 points for that, you're paying 80-ish points.
Oh yeah, fair point.
But
Yeah,
this is
nice.
definitely a unit that I like on my deck. Especially if I'm building a pure Swedish deck, I usually just take 2 cards of these.
Hmm. Do you think the AS350 is worth it compared to the Scout Defender? I know you get that good optics in comparison to very good optics of the AS350, but I mean you get rockets, which are do you think having rockets on your recon choppers add anything?
It's not that handy, because sometimes your helicopter is going to go off and try to attack something, which is really not what I wanted to do. So I usually prefer something that has very good or exceptional optics and is unarmed.
Yeah.
Because, well, the one reason that you could take the Scout Defender, but then the whole flanking maneuver wouldn't make too much sense, is if you're going flanking with this helicopter.
Yeah.
It has good autonomy, it's very small. The one problem that it has 4 HE, which means that even a lucky manpads hit is just going to kill it off.
No, I see what you mean. Yeah.
That's
It's
a bit risky.
Is
Should we
that
go on
not
to
the
vehicles?
same? Is that not the same? Actually, that's not. Funny enough, the AS350 can survive a hit, can't it?
Yeah, it can. It has 6 strength.
I think that's quite rare for a recon heli, isn't it?
Some of them can take it.
You think
The
about the
British
Russian MI,
really
I think
can't.
it's the MI4, isn't it? If those can go down in one man pad hit.
Yeah, I think MI4 and MI2 are the only ones that also have 4 strength, as well as Gazelles, Gazelle Recons. Mistral Choppers too, probably. But everything else has more than 4 HE, or 4 hit points.
Yeah. Okay.
Alright, now that we've freed up a couple of points, you can spend those as you see fit in the vehicle section.
What would you advise? Do you think?
I always like the IKV 105.
Okay.
The thinking behind taking one of those is that they have enough frontal armor to survive autocannon fire, especially at better range.
Yeah.
And they can be a really good buddy system if you're going with that initial push of Volkskromjäger.
Yeah. And they're quite bloody cheap, so.
Yep.
Do you think going for the updated version to kind of boost that accuracy?
You could. I usually advise to go with the updated version first, and if you find that you like them so much or you run out of them, just switch back.
Yeah. Okay. Do you think this is always something I've been quite wary of because they always get killed off far too quickly? But that's the vehicles with tow systems on.
Some, yeah, it's always a bit of discussion. Some they really work well. They are quite situational. And especially for this deck, I would really stay away from the RBS 56.
Yeah.
Because hitting infantry is not that easy to do. Hitting a vehicle like this is way easier.
Yeah.
So as far as let's say the tank destroyer vehicles, the Laro TOW 2, 70% accuracy, 25 armor penetration. That's a nice vehicle.
I've just noticed there's the MM/92 as well, which has got quite a nice autocannon on it.
Let's see.
Do you think that's worthwhile? The Danish one.
The PMNK.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has a pretty nice autocannon, and for your situation, it provides something that you don't already have yet. So yeah, instead of going with an ATGM, this would be the one that would really complement your deck.
Okay.
I always look at it like a toolkit. What doesn't my toolkit have yet? And in your case, that's autocannons.
Yeah. Well, it feels they're all similar to like a combat.
Yep. Although the combat gun is way better.
That's a pro step, isn't it? Would be.
Yeah, it is. But it's also, I think, a 90mm gun versus a 25mm, so you're going to have way more armor penetration on the 90.
Yeah.
Alright, then there's helicopters, Fennec TOW 2s. I have not been let down by these things ever.
Yeah, I see a lot of people using these.
Yeah.
They're kind of 70% accuracy, you know.
Yeah, it's nice. Why. Not only that, but also the 50% stabilizer. You could almost do a flyby on an enemy tank, going pretty much perpendicular to your lines, and then Just quickly darting out, firing a missile, kicking back.
I find having a stabilizer on a helicopter a bit, I wouldn't say ridiculous, but in real life, it's kind of, surely having, a helicopter can't just pop up, fire, and then drop back down.
Well, that's what they were designed to do with the Cold War in mind. Apaches were designed to hover behind the, let's say, the tree lines.
Yeah.
Pop up, fire a few missiles, pop back down. But they had to guide the missile all the way until the target, unless you were firing fire and forget missiles.
Which they're probably fine now, but it's kind of back then they obviously didn't.
No, back then not so much.
Hmm.
But that's what you got for example, the longbow radar for. The large radar dish on top of the rotor blade, so the rotor itself can be slightly below the tree line, with just the sensor system sticking out.
Yeah, I think that's what I heard. That's what they've been doing in Afghanistan, because all Apaches are now longbows.
Yeah.
And they just sit below a hill, just with the radar dish popping up.
Yeah. The one thing I would change with the Fennec, though, is switch them to 7. Go hardened instead of trained.
Just
because with that, you get that little bit of extra accuracy. It might be the difference between hitting and missing a target.
Mm-hmm.
Alright, then we got aircraft. F-16AM, great fighter.
Yeah.
MLU, could be a good buddy for your fighter.
Mm.
Also a great anti-tank unit. Puff the Magic Dragon.
Literally every pro player uses these like I've seen pro players use them as fighters for some reason, because they can destroy the radar when it comes on and just hit any planes with their AIM-9s.
Yep. You can also use those AIM-9s against helicopters if you have a rush somewhere.
Yeah.
Because against the helicopter you don't want to be flying at 1000 kph. You're just gonna dart wreck by it. Whereas this one, with even the twin autocannons and the AIM-9 as well as the 30% ECM, it might even be able to deflect a missile or two.
It's only 70 points.
Yep.
Great value.
The one thing that you can experiment with this unit is what kind of veterancy. Usually,
what would you go for? Hardened?
I would go for hardened. I think 2 is enough.
Yeah.
And you can make some really nice traps with these. For example, you send in 1, and the enemy is going to think, oh look, the siege aircraft just flew by, I can activate my radar now, and that's when your brother taps him out.
Yeah. And they're so cheap, you can do that. Like, when you're dealing with, a Prowler, 100 points each, you have to save up 200 points to get a pair.
Yeah, and this is just 140 points, which is about the same price as an expensive AA system.
Exactly.
Or 2. And then finally, F-16A Fighting Falcon. Very, very large bombs.
I think that's the same. Is that the same one the Americans have, or is it slightly less bombs?
The Eagle has 4 bombs.
Oh, okay. That'd be why.
But the Eagle is also more expensive. Eagle is, I think, 160.
And I get 2 of these. I know it's only a rookie.
Yeah, but
it's
a delivery truck. It's there to just drop off a bomb. It's not there to fight anything.
People who up bombers, I've never really seen the point. Because they don't even have to hit the exact marker you put them down on. They just have to hit within 10 meters.
Yeah, especially with a bomb this heavy.
Yeah, I mean, they'll rip anything up within 50, 60 meters.
Yeah, point and click, and you're gonna feel the shockwave anyway.
Yeah.
Other notable units in here, the Gripen is a pretty good aircraft as well, but I think that the F-16AM compares favorably to it, somehow.
Hang on, have a look. The thing about Swedish aircraft is after playing air-land battle and trying to hit things with the,
The Drakens.
And the Viggens, oh my god, they're just the Viggens just make me cry, they can't hit anything.
Yeah.
Ever.
For some reason they are very, very bad at their job.
I mean, they're just, they've got the same missiles.
Yeah, same missiles, guns. Same amount of missiles, same stats.
Yeah, it's literally the same plane.
The one thing that the F-16AM does a little bit better is its gun. You're going to get more suppression out of the gun, which means faster stunning of enemy aircraft. But it's really situational. You don't really use your gun that often.
Yeah. But you also get
I would just stick with the AM.
Fuel on the F-16 so it can stay on target. Actually, that's interesting. It can't stay on target for any longer.
No, somehow the Gripen seems to be doing the same thing with 1,000 liters less fuel.
Yeah, that's That's not right.
Fuel efficiency.
Well, I mean, I get like 500 fuel, but 1,000?
Yeah, I don't know.
That's a bit ridiculous.
If my car could do that, I would switch in a heartbeat. If only.
Well, if my car could go 1,000 kilometers an hour, I think I'd see it.
No, I really mean the time over target or the fuel
Okay.
system. Anyway, I think all around your deck looks solid like this. You got autocannons, you got good infantry, really good infantry even. I say take it out for a spin and see how it works.
Okay, I will do.
And then for naval section, if you ever play naval maps, that's a whole different discussion.
Which the only time I ever play naval is against the AI. I mean, I've just given up playing it naval against other players because they just spam.
Yes, they do spam. If they spam and you want to spam something back, make sure you have anti-ship artillery, or coastal artillery as it's called.
I know, I've seen that be so... It runs out of ammo quite quickly, but I've seen it be so effective.
Yep. Artillery anti-ship is the tag. You get the Burlier Axis sets, you get the MOBAs which fire harpoons, and then Sea Busters which also fire harpoons.
Let's get one of each then.
Yep. Make sure you get the lowest veterancy on these though, because you want to have volume, not exactly accuracy.
Yeah.
And then for the rest, well, I don't know, maybe an F14 if you really like those. Personally, I have never seen them hit when I use them, but they always seem to hit me. You could throw in one elite F14 to deter enemy from using anti-ship planes against your fleet, if you have any.
Okay.
And then maybe, I don't know, some unit that you particularly like. You could bring in an EOTS Hawk through the naval tab.
That would require me to play on the deck that has naval capability.
Yeah, I'm not
know.
recommending that you do, but if you find yourself in a map where there is naval and you just want to focus on land, but you still want to get longer range, let's say hands-off AA. Or you could go with... Oh, there's even Amos in this section.
Yeah.
And a lot of infantry, RBS Hawk, RBS 90s. Yeah, I think that does it.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Cheers. Alright guys, if you want to use this deck, the link is in the description down below. Make sure you import it, adjust it to your own needs, and let me know what your results are. Other than that, if you want to do a deck discussion about one of your decks, leave me a comment down below and I'll be happy to help you out. Looking forward to the next video, and seeing you there.